There is a concept of Christian liberty where you or I may disagree on something, but we have to let each decide his own. Drinking is one of those things. Baptists typically take a very firm approach on drinking alcohol. The rest of Christendom does not. It's Christian liberty. Can you be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company when parts of that company do things you disagree with? I think you've got to give Christian liberty as the answer here, that you may not like that Randall Stephenson, the CEO of AT&T, presided over a company that had a subsidiary that produced Game of Thrones, but would you far prefer him or someone else? And that gets me to Francis Collins at NIH. I would far prefer a believer to be in charge than someone who's hostile to faith. At least there are some things that could be guided, but probably there are more questions there than answers. What I think, however, is a great problem is that in America right now, a lot of people of faith are more divided against each other than they are the world. And this division happens a lot. In Scripture, we are often confronted with pairs or groups of people who are all unquestionably people committed to their faith, but do it in different ways. Mary and Martha is one of the great examples. But also, there were these 12 guys, we call them the apostles. One of them did things very, very badly and wound up hanging himself. And then they brought in another, and then Paul is brought in, and then James and Jude, Jesus' brothers. I'm reminded Jude 5 says that Jesus rescued a people out of Egypt. Didn't say Moses did it. He said Jesus did it. Didn't say Yahweh did it. He said Jesus did it. That's Jesus' brother writing. One of the most powerful lines of Scripture in the entire Bible. It's not a man who did it. It's God himself. There were all these apostles, and they did things in different ways. The apostle John, not to be confused with John, Jesus' brother, or James, rather, not John, James. The apostle James was the first of the apostles killed. He was hard-headed, stubborn, a firebrand, and he got himself killed. The apostle Thomas packed up and fled to India to share the gospel, southern India. The Portuguese were shocked when they arrived in India in the 1500s and found a group of Christians on the southern tip of India. Turns out it was the apostle Thomas had made it there before anybody else and shared the gospel. He did it his own way, at his own time, at his own pace, and no one was there saying, "You're not Christian enough, you're doing it wrong. You should be doing it this way instead of that way. You should be using the King James Version instead of the ESV." My gosh, people want to tell each other how to do the job better these days when half of them aren't doing the job at all. Maybe at some point, instead of everybody squabbling with each other on how to do it, you just got to let God sort it out. Go do your own thing. Maybe instead of arguing with each other, you should be praying for each other a whole lot more. And maybe we should recognize that there are people who are put in positions of leadership who do things, and we would far prefer them to be there than not be there, even if we sometimes think they are in untenable positions for people of faith. Maybe we should be offering each other some grace in this. Right now, people within Christendom in the United States are fighting with each other more than they're fighting with the world. And they've all decided each other is accommodating the world in some way. Some of them have decided to be so repulsive to the world that they're never even going to pull people into the faith. They're just going to be getting attaboys from their fellow believers while really not able to share the gospel or being a good witness. And others are so hostile to people in faith, they're no longer edifying or helpful to people of faith and can't back up their brothers. None of them on either side can really be known by the love they're supposed to have for each other. And maybe we should be rethinking that, and maybe we would all be doing a better job of this if we focused on loving our neighbors instead of telling each other how to do our jobs. Can you imagine the apostles sitting around yelling at each other over, "You're not doing it the way I would do it, therefore you're not doing it the way Jesus would want you to do it"? Really? Maybe that's why Thomas got out of Dodge and went to southern India. Maybe that's why we should just remember that we've all got a role to play and we need to play it instead of lecturing each other on the way we're doing our jobs. Maybe we should realize that God's sovereign and your mean tweet isn't necessary.